Ivy Hall is actually the first place I did do any talks, and it's almost 25 years ago.
Whoa, really?
Yeah. John let me give my lecture on St. Francis of Assisi. And that was I remember it exactly. It was October the 11th. It was 1 month after 9/11. So, anyway, I'd like to talk about education, the education of the artist, and in particular the education of the artist who is going to do sacred or liturgical works or devotional works, and how that happens. We still don't have that quite in place here. We know that our Catholic colleges and universities don't really allow fine arts majors, and if they do, it's not in devotional or liturgical art. So my background, this is my grade school years. I remember it so clearly. We had on Fridays this thing called Poetry and Picture Study. It's just a little booklet. One side was a poem and the other side was a painting. So we were exposed to things like Titian's The Entry of the Virgin into the Temple. These great masterpieces. Murillo's Immaculate Conception painting. So we didn't go into depth with them, but it introduced us to great Catholic art. And this was all, under the tutelage of the Sisters of St. Joseph. There was another one. I remember the book exactly. Velasquez's Coronation of the Virgin. And it also included things like this masterpiece, The Helping Hand. So we were introduced to the idea of a moral aesthetic in this thing. But one of my favorites was, of course, the Angelus. So after 8 years of grammar school, I went on to Father Judge High School. And that's all I'm going to say about that education, okay? No art. I was actually talking to someone, was it yesterday or today, why we couldn't take art in Father Judge, because art is for dumb kids, right? My IQ was supposedly too high to be an artist. But there were certain things that were happening that kept me sort of plugged in, and one of them was this masterpiece, which was starting to get published in different magazines. This incredible painting by Salvador Dali, which is now in Washington, D.C. But during my high school years, one of the monumental moments was this. A box, a wooden box with a Pietà in it that wound up at the New York World's Fair in 1965. And that's what this was already sort of, this pavilion was telling us where it's going. It's even before Vatican II, but this is the Vatican Pavilion in 1965. I mean, you can just see from whatever that thing is on the outside, whatever, I don't know what it was. But anyway, we got to see this incredible work. And there were, I remember, 3 tiers and a fourth. There was fast, not so fast, slower, and then still. But when you're up on the last tier, you're looking through everybody's head. Thank God we didn't have cell phones. It would have been flashing off like crazy. But anyway, it was one of those moments that you just say, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. And that's what, of course, I couldn't draw. I did do some sketches, I don't know where they are, from the non-moving platform. But I essentially had a copy from a photograph. And this is what I entered in my portfolio to go to the Philadelphia College of Art. And I got put on probation. Why? Oh, well, they didn't accept religion as a credit, and I had all 95s in it for 4 years in high school. They said it's no different from gym. Anyway, I got into school, and I started to learn the lessons right away about it's a shame you've got this arm attached to your body. It doesn't belong. They really try to tell you that you're some weird freak from another time zone. So you start to get this lesson that you would have been good had you been born at another time, but we're not doing that anymore. So the idea that it's not just religious art, but that quality of art no longer works today. We're not doing that anymore. And I wasn't the only person that kind of bought that. So this was what I would do if I did have a model in front of me. But by my second year, this is what my work looked like. Oh, you see, Spencer was a classmate of mine, so he remembers. But what they do, and they're still doing it, they teach in a very formalist way that the figure and representationalism is not significant. It's really size, shape, color, place, blah, blah, blah. So, to me, one of my guys was on the right here, Clifford Still. So, to me, I was doing a non-representational Clifford Still painting. There's the Tiepolo on the other side. It's still kind of being taught this way today in most art schools. It's just formalism. Just out and out straight formalism. Size, shape, color, place, that's all. Okay, there we go. Now, I get a scholarship based on that stuff. I get a scholarship to Skowhegan, Maine for 9 weeks. And there's the cabins by the lake, then there's the studios where we work up on the hill, and there's a road. And in the middle of the road, there is a little cabin. And the cabin was sort of like a student lounge, and it had a stereo and things like that, and students would go up there at night to drink beer and dance and all. But I would go up in the middle of the afternoon, I found these records, these old 78s. And here's this one. It says, Benedictus, Mass in B minor. I don't know. I put it on. And I played it every afternoon. And the words came back to me, because of being an altar boy, I know the Benedictus. And something just clicked in my head that, wait a minute, this composition supports the words, and they support each other and the meaning. So this idea of putting it all together again actually came back to me not through visual art, but through music. So I became, this person, I've got to listen to more Bach, more Bach, more Bach. And so I did. And then for a while there, it was this kind of thing. I'm dealing with syncopation. I'm doing with fugue. I'm trying to visualize Bach as much as I could. So even though I had made this connection back to narrative content, it's like St. Augustine, heal me, but not just yet. I'm not ready to change. And I wasn't ready to change. So I did things like this, over and over and over again. And then something else happened that sort of influence was this. Relief. I had never really seen it, and we didn't learn this stuff. So somebody is still doing this. Oh, who's this guy? Giacomo Manzu. Okay, so this again is pre-council. But like I said, I wasn't ready to quite give it up. And I kept doing it. And the more I did it, the more response I was getting. So I really, a lot of the stuff doesn't exist anymore. But, and Spencer, you know how I'm talking. Larry Day was my critic. He was a very talented, bright man, painter. And so I said, I'm not coming to class. I'm not working from life anymore. But he'd come to my studio there, and we were sitting down one day, and he said, well, I could see the influence of Jewish mysticism and the Kabbalah. And I put that Father Judge thing up again. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm this Catholic kid from Northeast. I ride the L every day. I don't know what you're talking. So I thought, one of us has to be off here. So if I had pictures of the sculpture I was doing at the time, it would be that spaghetti upside down. That can't be closer to the truth. I dropped a box of spaghetti on the ground, and I accidentally graduated from art school. That's me. Now, for whatever reason, I got the Fulbright. All right? And one of my teachers asked me, she said, I hear you're applying for Fulbright. I said, yes. To where? I said, oh, Rome. Everybody goes to Rome. She said, I don't think you should go to Rome. No, I think you should go to Florence. I didn't know anything about Florence. But anyway, I got off the train, and I remembered from art history that this Masaccio fresco of the Trinity is in there, and I went in, and that's where the beginning of life-changing experiences happen. When I walked in, it's all cleaned up in this photograph, and as it was in the art history books, printed in black and white. But one of the main things was that here's the prie-dieu, here's the candles, here's the dead flowers, here's the old lady kneeling there in front of it. And I thought, this stuff is still being used, alive and well. And so that was another turning moment. But the stopper for me was the Ghiberti doors. I had heard about them. Michelangelo called them the Gates of Paradise, and now I'm very interested in relief because of Manzù. And if I tell you that for over a year, I would get up every day. There were two things I had to do: go to Santa Croce to look at the Giotto frescoes, and go to Piazza del Duomo to study the Ghiberti doors over and over again. I got to see them in every possible weather, time of day, whatever it was. The north doors, the first set of doors that Ghiberti did, are still a great influence on me. But I got to understand how you could have different, in this kind of art, you could have different narrations going on at the same time. So you've got the creation of Adam, the creation of Eve, and the expulsion all in one. It's amazing how the economy here, that was stunned by the economy. Not that you can't do this in paint, but I said, well, I don't know how I'm going to learn this. One thing stuck in my head, and I don't know why, but I said, you've got to draw, and draw from sculpture. So I would do things like go to the Bargello, go to the Accademia where all of Michelangelo's works were, not all of them, but that whole series with the David, all the slaves, and go to the Duomo. Now in the Duomo, there was these little side chapels there, and Michelangelo's Blandinini Pietà was there. So I could go in there, draw from life, or exactly from the actual work, and you can see in the background there's frescoes and things like that. That was it's another view. And I would draw it over and over again from different views, sometimes trying to make up that missing leg that's not there, that never was really. Oh, I don't know how that got distorted, but it's not. That's from Michelangelo's tombs. I don't know how to correct that. But I realized if I want to represent the incarnation, and this is what hit me about this particular period of art, that because we've left the Byzantine, and it wasn't a matter of modernism. It was, I think, and again, I remember doing this in the lecture about St. Francis, and the focus on incarnational art. And there's three components that are mandatory. You must know anatomy. So I started to study anatomy. You must learn perspective, because we're not dealing with Byzantine reverse perspective. We're dealing with divinity in our space, in our time, as much as possible. And of course, light on the opaque object, not light through, not reflected back with a gold null space, which I respect. I have all great respect for that. I understand those conventions. It's just that I'm not orthodox, and I didn't want to be flat. So I would go to these places. This is Perugino and Santa Maria dei Pazzi. And you can still go in these places today, these places, and draw. And I would go there and draw from drapery. But with all the information I gathered, I could only kind of come up with this at the end of the year. And I did everything I was told not to do in art school. Never put anything in the middle. Now I know why, because it's important. It's, it's the center, and this becomes central to the theme. And then I did a lot of study of the different meanings of the trees. Each one is a symbol for, I did a lot of study of Ferguson's Signs and Symbols of Christian Art. Great book, if you're interested in this. What's nice about the Ferguson book is that all the examples are in the National Gallery in DC. The only sculpture that I was able to really come back with was this bust of St. Stephen. I brought the wax back. I got a cast here, and the drawing is from a painting in Bologna. And when I came back, with my father's recommendation, I got a studio on Jewelers Row on Sanson Street. I felt at home because I'm still in touch with a lot of the people there, because we're using the same tools. We're just bigger, smaller of the same thing. And of course, my big hero, Ghiberti, belonged to the Goldsmith Guild. I'm not a carver, I never could, so didn't want to either. And then in 1976, here in Philadelphia, I don't know, John, do you remember this?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay, this exhibition of liturgical art at the convention centers in conjunction, not for the bicentennial, but it drew people from all over. Mother Teresa was there as well. And of course, one of my teachers, Walter Erlbacher, was commissioned to do the Christ breaking the bread as sort of main work to come out of this. Walter had been raised Orthodox Jew, but he would say atheist. I never believed it. And he asked for an advisor. And of course, Monsignor John Miller happened to be the advisor. And he asked Monsignor, he said, "Can I do an Apollo Christ?" And Monsignor said yes. Now, for those of you who may not, the Apollo Christ is what we see in the catacombs. It's the beardless Christ wearing a toga. And that went on for quite a long time before the more sort of long-haired, bearded Christ comes about. And so anyway, they've moved this. It's not in the best light anymore. But this was the main feature of the show. Unfortunately, the rest of it was like this. Now, what's nice about this Henry Matisse, don't make faces at me, Spencer, is that it's behind glass. It's too precious to wear in the Divine Mysteries. It's beyond great. But this was very typical of a lot of the work there. And not knowing people were out there doing liturgical or devotional art, they went ahead and sort of curated this show and picked prominent New York artists. So this is Alice Neal. She was given a commission to do, can't remember the priest's name. And of course Yes, thank you. And the big prominent figurative painter of the time, Philip Pearlstein, gets to do the portrait of Cardinal Kroll. It's funny because he never put heads on figures, so he had a hard time putting the whole Zucchetto on. That was just, had been tough. But this was kind of dominant. This is Venturi Rausch furniture, the new whatever. So we're starting to see the beginnings of the effects of, I would say, a misinterpretation of the document. I think somebody just said, oh, contemporary, that means modern. No, it doesn't. They're two completely different meanings. And so they were sent out to, Venturi Rausch was sent out to put the longest fluorescent tube ever made to block out all the representational art. Where was this, at St. Agatha and St. James, I think? You can see the plastic ambo there. That was all plastic. The whole thing was, molded plexiglass. Yeah. So we're going to blind you from seeing any of that other representational art. One thing came out of it for me is I met a mentor, Bolton Morris, and he needed a baptismal font handle. And so I made this in bronze, and of course had it gold plated on Jewelers Row there. And I started to understand more about these signs and symbols in terms of salvific history. But I was still very disillusioned, and I thought there's no place for me in here. I've got to, so I just went out and I started, painting from life again and going down to the waterfront, which I enjoyed. And I thought, well, maybe if I do some Philadelphia themes, I can get a commission. Because that's, my whole background is not, I'm not a gallerist. I never was and never will be. I wanted to do something for a space, specific space. So I started to do things like mummers. That didn't go anywhere. Then I said, I got an idea. And it's actually, I think this is happening tomorrow. The greased pole contest. Yeah. And I had the spot for it. This beautiful circle in the park next door to Fleischer Art Memorial. Right around the corner from where this happens. No. Unacceptable. Okay. I had a whole file full of letters from the city saying, your work has been deemed inappropriate for public space. Your work has been deemed... So anyway, my father, who directed me to Jewelers Row, my father loved going to different churches, but one of his all-time favorite churches was Old St. Joe's. Now, I have to confess, I was not going to Mass now. After the changes, I really couldn't follow it. I had no idea. I mean, there was no implementation, as a lot of you know. You just walked in one day and you're saying, well, why is Mr. Snyder up on the altar? Why? We didn't know that there's these lectors and there's this and there's that and all of it. So anyway, he said, hey, I'm going to go to Old St. Joe's this morning. You want to meet me? And then we'll go up to Mom's for lunch. I said, sure. So this was, again, a lot of these commissions that were given out during the Eucharistic Congress, they had stations of the cross, and each one was a different shaped polygon. It was just heads. And you really couldn't tell one, you couldn't talk about trans. You couldn't tell male from female. So anyway, so I mean, a lot of times you don't know where the stuff comes from, but one of the waitresses from the restaurant where I used to work, the saloon, called me and she said, I know we haven't spoken for years, but I'm on the parish council here at Old St. Joe's, and they're looking for somebody to do the set of Stations of the Cross because they want to change them. They said they couldn't find it in the catalogs that suited them. And she said, I know somebody. And so I put everything together and I went to meet Father Curry and showed him my work, and he said, okay, great, you got the job. He said, there's one problem. I said, what's that? He said, we don't have any money. And I said, neither do I. Okay, great. And went back, did all these studies, and then I didn't know if I could do, I went out and I hired this young, handsome Italian sculptor, God, and put him to the work. Yeah, that was me. Anyway, I started working on them. It's a commission I never, ever regretted doing because you start to realize that one work begets another in a way. And so I can ask anybody who's interested, I've never gotten a thing from my website or any of that stuff. Somebody sees it and says, can you do this? And so here are the stations from Old St. Joe's. And I took it on as, now I can do everything I really wanted to do or studied in Florence. I could do the architecture, I can do the plants, I can do animals. Everyone has a different animal form in here. So, and they're all, and wrote down all the symbols for everybody to read. And this led me to, how did we get the stations? Where'd they come from? And led me onto my study of the life of St. Francis and the development of the Via Dolorosa. As you see, the lecture was, I was teaching at University of the Arts and PCA. After this, Father Curry said, I'd like you to do something for our 250th year here at Old St. Joe's. And I'm thinking, oh great, I'm going to get to do the flight into Egypt. right? No. Why? Because I want the Exodus. The Exodus, you mean like, yeah, the parting of the Red Sea. In relief. Well, you know, I thought, why do you want the Exodus? He said, because I want this to be accessible to Christians, Jews, and Muslims. Oh, okay. So that's how this commission started, and I kind of don't remember how I did it, to be honest with you. But it's one that really stayed with me a long time. And there, of course, is the carrying of the bones of Joseph to the Promised Land. And there it is. And there's the 12 tribes above on the frieze there. And I was asked I seem to do predominantly work with the orders, not that I sort of go to them, they come to me, more so than anyone in diocese, diocesan priests, I should say. And this was something that they requested for the Church of St. Genevieve in Flowertown. It was manned by the Augustinians, and this is Blessed Stephen Bellasini. So I did it, and the Hankels commissioned it, and it was taken and put into the rectory. I don't think they wanted that because they wanted to, you know, alert to the cause of Blessed Stephen. So when I read in the paper that the Augustinians are giving it back to the Archdiocese, I called Father Michael at St. Rita's and I said, call them. Let's get the Blessed Stephen Bellasini sculpture here. So we did, and now it's in the space that Father had put aside for veneration of the relics of Blessed Stephen Bellasini. So it's all together now, and it took 17 years, but we got there.
Where is it?
It's at St. Rita's. Yeah. Yeah, Father had asked me, he said, do you have a copy of that? I said, no, it's a one-of-a-kind cast. I said, why? He said, I'm going to Genazzano to bring back the relics of Blessed Stephen. Combined, I had petitioned and got a show at the Morris Gallery at the Pennsylvania Academy. I don't know if they do that. I don't think they do that anymore. But anyway, all my friends were saying, you're not going to put any religious work in, are you? I said, well, maybe a little bit, you know, show, you know, do the whole thing. I certainly had enough secular work with all the other things, and I was showing at a gallery in Soho, Co-op rather. And the more they told me don't put anything religious in, the more I said, that's all it's going to be. And I said to the director, Judith, I said, well, what night do you want for the opening? And I said, September 14th. Right? We know what that is. Exaltation of the Holy Cross. And she said, why do you want September 14th? I said, it's my birthday. Which is almost, my birthday's actually the 13th, but I thought, I'm going to be setting up the show then. Why not? You know, it's okay. Anyway, I brought in the Stations of the Cross from Old St. Joe's, because St. Joe's is being renovated. So that whole wall, if you could kind of make it out there, is all the stations and the Blessed Bellasini. And so it was that record attendance. It was really a wonderful experience. And it's really what that show led to my getting appointed at the academy, because I wasn't teaching there then. And some of the students said, why don't we have somebody like this here? And good old Arthur DaCosta said, that's a very good question. So I got hired to teach anatomy at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, and did that for almost 20 years. And of course, I wanted to continue the study of architecture, so I took a course with, Alvin Hall. And did the drafting of the orders, and I loved it. I loved it because the relationship between the human body and measuring the orders was just so enlightening. And I was terrified because I thought I'm going to be with all these architecture students. But because I had dealt with the idea of proportions and how many heads to a unit, and now it's just how many circles to a column. This is very easy. So, but it was all from, we had to draft it and then do light and shade from memory. I went on to just sort of do designs of churches that if I were to design a church, it would be like this. I always had this idea of more of a church looking like a city, just not one solid building, but a city where the baptistry is here and that this is over there, and just having fun playing with it. I finally got back to Italy and started to think more about what was I going to do after this. And Mr. Mozart entered the scene all of a sudden. And again, when I have music for composition reasons, because I think I get more from that, it's not usually the vocal parts. Not that I don't listen to Mozart opera or the Requiem. I listen to, like Bach, I'll listen to the art of the fugue. Then I'll do St. John Passion. But that's for content. The other is for composition and design. So I would listen to Mozart over and over again. And I entered an exhibition at Bryn Mawr Presbyterian. They would have these exhibitions of art every spring. And it was a group show, one-person show, back and forth. So they offered me I was in the group shows, and they said, we'd like to have you for the spring exhibition this year as a one-man show. Do you have anything? Because it's going to be during Lent. I said, yeah, actually, the Stations of the Cross are available. And so we hung them in the Catherine Pugh Memorial Chapel. I didn't know anything about the Presbyterian Church at the time. They said they wanted me to replace the whole reredo that had really gotten in bad shape. It was really just tapestry. So we were talking about the whole wall, and I'm thinking again, oh, I'm doing these 10 reliefs, miracles of Christ. And that didn't happen. Why? Because they wanted to go horizontally with the sacraments. I said, oh, 7 reliefs? No. Only 3. No, excuse me, 2. 2? Yeah, 2 sacraments. What's that? Baptism and Eucharist held together by the Word. And I said, oh, you mean they're going to go behind the altar? That's not an altar. It's a table. There's no bones in here. I mean, big education. So anyway, these are the clay models. I made one request, though, because they wanted baptism and Eucharist and preaching in the middle, held together by the Word, okay? I said, can I do a post-resurrection Eucharist theme? And they actually let me do it. So I did Christ at Tiberias. And here all 3 are together. I thoroughly enjoyed doing this commission. I know it looks very high. People don't, it's only 4 inches deep. But I found more and more ability to use something that, again, is a Quattrocento invention, perspectival relief. The combination that Brunelleschi and Ghiberti came up with is irreplaceable. This is detail from Sermon on the Mount, and this is Christ at Tiberias. But I never left the idea of, because you can see here how that whole tall reredo, you wouldn't have been able to read them. It was a better solution. But I always had some fantasies of doing things that aren't for any commission, just because I get the picture in my head and I want to do it. This is a drawing I did for the Assumption. This is at Atco, New Jersey. It's on the facade. Here's the plaster. And I usually do plaster first and then make a mold. And here's the bronze. And I've never had any complaints about the, nudity aspect of these figures from anyone. Here's a transfiguration I did in just tones. And I thought instead of it, what would happen if they were lit like lanterns or something from within, that the light is inside the figure. During that period, I developed this small bronze, Christ and the Demon Child. And we're hoping that this may be enlarged soon and go to a retreat house for recoveries. But that's, it's 30 years ago or something. Now, in this period, I'm starting to, I wanted to develop a range of light and shade stronger than what I was doing, now that I was experiencing relief. And a lot of times people say, well, who taught you how to draw? And I'll say, Maria Callas. I would listen to Callas over and over and over again because of her light and dark. I don't know how else to describe it musically, how she could manipulate that voice and that range. So the whole deeper chiaroscuro came in to play through that period. Here's my Christ Among the Doctors. This is a pen and ink sketch. Raising of Lazarus. I was looking at different kinds of light sources. How do you do this? John the Baptist. Feast of Herod, I call that one. And this is St. Florian. I'd read about St. Florian and the drowning and the fire, and I thought, I don't know what, I can't really describe, because Anthony was asking me earlier today in the studio about the St. Francis drawing. I don't know where it was coming from. I can't say. It was just in a whole, I wish I could get back to it because I got some fantastic images there. This is Ezekiel in the Valley of Dry Bones. And these are very large. This drawing is 10 feet by 5 feet. Purification of Isaiah. And here is St. Francis holding up the church. This little figure underneath of St. Francis, way under there. And there's the angel with the papal symbols in there on the right-hand corner. And again, after studying anatomy, and this is why it's so critical, because I don't need models. If I had them, fine, but if I don't have them, that's okay too. But it enables you to compose. It's sort of like studying solfege, You can do the music from your head. So I had this idea of doing the miraculous draft of fishes and as a ceiling painting. And you're sitting under it. And what would it be like to be looking up, sort of like what the fish would be seeing, of this net coming down over you. The whole fishers of men idea. So I played around with it very much. I still would never say no if this were to be commissioned. But I did so many drawings of it. And then actually did a sort of grisaille painting of it where Christ is on one end and the net's being cast over. So this idea of doing the figure in different perspectives. But, certain things come along that the commissions would sometimes have to put idea aside. And the next is a commission I did for St. Mary Goretti in Hatfield, PA. These are the only works that I had that were intentionally destroyed. They don't exist anymore. So, as the pastor said, unworthy of the people's devotion. That's the sort of beauty in the eye of the beholder, because he actually said that. After all, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Being, familiar with the parish of St. Rita's that I had moved into after Old St. Joe's, and being familiar with this Christ of Holy Saturday, it was a very dominant image in northern Italy, and central, I should say. Father Michael Di Gregorio, who said, for the millennium, we want to develop the shrine, the lower shrine. And so I did the drawings, and now I got to work in relief, do Christ of Holy Saturday. And it allowed me to sort of go back into the Florentine school again and Cimabue. So this is the plaster in the studio. It's not a good photograph, I'm sorry, but the bronze there in relief. And we still celebrate this on Holy Saturdays. We do go and have prayer there. It's probably the only image I know of in the entire city of Christ of Holy Saturday. And this is what I like, are things being used. You know, that they're not museums, and you can touch them, and you can venerate them. And the next was to move on to the sculpture of St. Rita Kasha. So I had this one very, very static moment on one end, and now I needed something very dynamic on the other. St. Rita receiving the thorn from the Christ of Holy Saturday. They believe that she received it on Good Friday in front of that image, because something like a life-size crucifix was just unheard of in this poor convent in Kasha. One thing I was doing, when I get to the mural, I'll explain how this sculpture was perceived. This is Blessed Teresa Fasce, a fresco. She's the mother foundress of modern-day Kasha. And here are the two together. I went in to do this, Father Michael asked me to do this large mural on the other side of the wall. We call it the Peace Mural. And it's St. Rita offering an olive branch in exchange for weapons. So I did people from every period, every culture possible, different, which actually happens in Kasha, because as they process to the shrine for the feast, they are dressed in different periods. I didn't know that at the time. However, when I was working on the mural, one of the parishioners, she was coming out of the Eucharistic chapel, and she said, "Oh, I'm glad you're doing that." I said, "Oh, thank you." Well, she said, "It's better than that thing." And she pointed to the St. Rita sculpture. That's well, fine. I said, "You don't like it?" She said, "Oh, no." I said, "Why?" I didn't tell her I was the author. She said, "It looks like it belongs in a museum." Ah. What did we do to make Catholics think that anything of that quality is undeserved or inappropriate? That's on us, folks. We've had art museums and art history help us there too. Again, this is the orders. I was invited by the Norbertines to do a piece for their cemetery plot. And they were given a gift to do, from Wisconsin, Racine, to do something precious for yourself. So they said, "Well, we'd like you to do the dream of Blessed Hugh of Foss, who was given, just much like the Franciscan legend, given the order to take on the order. And he said, 'I'm unworthy.' And that night he has a dream, and it's St. Norbert in his episcopal robe saying, 'I want to introduce you to the risen Christ.'" So they said, "Well, obviously that's got to be relief." And I thought, no, I can do this in the round. And so it's there today. I went on to teach at Corchet, an extension of anatomy, which I still do and like very, very much. And I was teaching it at the New York Academy of Fine Arts. And I quit on 9/11. I was there just a couple blocks away from the towers, and I couldn't go back. And that's when good Dr. John allowed me to give my first talk here. St. Francis and the Renaissance. And his title, he read the lecture, and I had the old one, Influence on the Arts and this and that. And he said, "Why don't you do you mind if I change it to St. Francis and the Renaissance Imagination?" I've never changed it since. Thank you, John. And then St. Francis comes back in with the commission for St. John's. When the Franciscans, when the Caps took over, they asked me to do two sculptures, one of St. Francis and one of Padre Pio. And this is what I like too. This is what we can do with our things. we venerate them in some way. And this is the model for St. Thomas of Villanova. And I did St. Thomas with the children holding a nude child. Father Don Riley, at the dedication, I never spoke to him about it, but he got up at the dedication and he said how this, what to him, this gesture of St. Thomas of Villanova reminds us that Christ holds us in all our nakedness. And I thought, God, great. And then I had to finish the patron saints of St. Rita, St. Nicholas the Tolentine, St. Augustine. I like when people come in, especially some of our, no offense to anybody, they'll bring in a group from a school or church and they'll say, oh, Mr. Visco, I'm so glad you made St. Augustine African American. Neither. And the last, St. John the Baptist. But I really thoroughly enjoyed that whole experience. It went on from 2019 to 2007. And then I got called by the then Bishop Burke in La Crosse, Wisconsin. And he asked me if I would do the Stations of the Cross and the Rosary Walk. And just after that, we did this gemologia, this twinning of the parishes of St. Rita's and the Basilica in Cascia. And got to Cascia, and I noticed that on the walk up to Rocca Perena, one of the shrines of St. Rita's, there were these Stations of the Cross, much like the designs that they were hoping to have in La Crosse. So I just studied them and came back and did these stations here. And I kept them, and like my other things, I kept them kind of minimal. I wanted the focus to be a little more directed, and there wasn't the area to do multi-figure compositions here. I wanted to show sort of like the loneliness of it. And here's Cardinal Burke at the dedication, December. Now, I was saying this to the seminarians the other day. The rush to get churches done, because the bishop's coming, but you have Lent, and it's not even Lent yet. It's December or whatever. And what Cardinal Burke did is the rite of erection of the Stations of the Cross. And it's something that is done the first time they're prayed. And it's a beautiful ceremony, and we're missing it because of deadline. It's not really a deadline. Cardinal can come in, or bishop can come in, bless the church, and you do the erection, this rite of erection, Ash Wednesday, or the first Friday night. Cardinal Burke wanted the Rosary Walk in blue to be like the azulejos tiles of Fatima. And we did all 20 mysteries. I did them in paint. And then they were transferred to tiles that hold up very, very well. This is freezing weather, and they're still okay. So here's all 20 mysteries. And here they are in situ. And Duncan Stroik designed the church, and there was this cupola with 4 pendentifs, and they continued to ask me to work. So we did the 4 doctors of the church that spoke of the Marian dogmas. St. Ambrose, St. St. Ephraim, St. John Damascus, and oh God, who's the one? Blanking. Wrote about the one with the crosses of Jerusalem on them. I can think of it Latin, I can't think of the name. Anyway, of Alexandria. Sorry. And so here they are in situ. Then I got asked to do the narthex ceiling, and I thought of the miracles of Fatima as we go around all the different stories of St. Juan Diego, different apparitions. And again, I got interested in these above scenes. forced perspective. So that's the canvas as it stands. I got an offer from Washington to show the Mysteries of the Rosary in D.C. And that was at in the crypt of the National Shrine. And in Washington, I was offered another work to do at St. Stephen Martyr Church. And it's offered a different kind of thing I've never done before, with these catenary curves, excuse me. And for whatever reason, the church is amazing on the inside, but this is the outside. These, I mean, less than Home Depot doors. The church is famous because it was the preferred church of John Kennedy as president. Why? Because there's no steps. And the president had a very, very bad back. So he would get out of the car, because it's not the Catholic Church that presidents, if they are practicing Catholics, go to. It's the Cathedral St. Matthew in D.C. So President Kennedy would go in, sit in the last pew, and leave. He's always doing it alone. And of course, they have the pew marked. But the inside is sort of like an unadorned Fortuny, or excuse me, Gaudí. And so I redesigned them at the catenary curves and the life of St. Stephen and panels and reliefs. And the bottom one here on the right is the pastor wouldn't let me put a horse in. It's the conversion. I said, the last one's got to be the conversion of St. Paul on the road to Damascus. And, you know, sometimes, doesn't say in Scripture that he was on a horse, but it's, again, one of the traditions within the art world, in the visual art world. Even the Byzantines use him getting struck off a horse. And that's where we are today with that. I moved on to Our Lady of Guadalupe. This is really my first diocesan connection. And this is, we're working with Monsignor Gentili here, who inherited this problem of redesigning the entire footprint of the church. So he invited me in, and I forget how many years we worked on that. But anyway, if you ever get out there, it's quite lovely. This is the San Juan Diego Chapel I designed. It doesn't look like that today, but these are the original designs. And the Guadalupe Shrine, to Our Lady of Guadalupe. The architect had this space designated with 110 loose chairs, a piano, and drums. Otherwise, in my book called Praise Band Space, they had never done a choir loft. So Monsignor said, I want a choir loft. Well, we don't know how to do that. They had already done 13 churches in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, but never, ever were able to build a choir loft. Anyway, it's quite handsome. And I designed it, but other artists, Neil Carlin did the painting, George Nista did the frame. So these are all fellow artists. And then went on to do another Stations of the Cross. This is now my third. These are the drawings. I do grisaille paintings first, then full color. And these are two drawings for the Assumption to the Annunciation to the St. Joseph and the Annunciation to Our Lady. That led to, I didn't really realize I had a kind of a career in liturgical designing, but they needed help at St. Joseph's in Downingtown. So I designed the whole floor plan based on the architectural drawings. This is the first cruciform church to be built in Philadelphia since Holy Innocents and Juniata. And that was, I think, 1954. It's amazing. And so I did the whole graduation of materials going from terrazzo to marble. This is the church in construction. It's wonderful to see these things come together. It takes a while, but there's great anticipation, a lot of work, a lot of meetings. I designed the altar. Here's the altar being constructed. And here's Archbishop Chaput placing the relics and anointing the altar. And here we are at dedication. I got called back to Wisconsin because Cardinal Burke had this idea of the memorial to the unborn. And there was permission there. There is a columbarium, so the remains of stillborn miscarriages are all buried in there. And they wanted the guardian angel to the unborn, so this is the model for it. And then it got cast in bronze, and this is the installation. I don't want to work this big anymore. It was hard. It was very. I don't think I'd be able to do it today. And right after this, I got invited to teach at the Sacred Art School in Florence and teach anatomy. Now this kind of worked. How are we doing for time? I don't have my clock.
8:08.
Oh, okay. The education is an issue right now for the artist that wants to do devotional or liturgical work. We're not allowed to do it in our Catholic colleges and universities. Why? That's an excellent question. Who's ever asking that? We cannot be a fine arts major in any of these places. And if we are in art in the art department, one thing you can't have is a model. Absolutely verboten. This is the great mystery of current Catholic education in so-called sacred art. It doesn't exist. So I took this course over to Florence, and I would invite people to come and draw with me, and they did, and it was great, but the place doesn't exist anymore. It exists, but not, they don't teach anatomy. They don't have life drawing. They gave it all up. So this is us in the Bargello all drawing together from, again, Michelangelo. However, if you want to redo my education, which I just took you through, you're going to be confronted with this sort of thing. Okay, this is how the Bernardini Pietà is lit today. You got to pay to see it. And then you're told you're sitting there too long. And next to you is the Abramovich, because you want to see the juxtaposition of these two things. That she's doing the same thing Michelangelo did. We're in trouble here. This is what Isola San Giorgio Maggiore is showing today. Underwear in marble. So what's happened is we took all the art out of the churches, put it in museums, and the empty churches are now museums for contemporary, non-religious art. I'm hoping this doesn't happen here. It's all over Italy, all over. So we're caught between these two things here. One is allowing the artist to do whatever he or she wants, and then these unending over-the-counter things. We're going from this kind of arrangement of the Communion of Saints to this. This is Catholic art today. Okay? What I learned in that, poetry and picture study, these kids are getting South Park figures. So we're here, folks. We're no better than the Zuckerberg here. Okay, we've somehow become Calvinists. This just isn't Puritanism. This is Calvinism now. And here again, we were drawing at the art school in Florence to get that sense of the corporeal. But again, like I said, that's gone. And we've got this kind of thing, where a crucifix was replaced with, these stick figures. The one on the left is EWTN. Somebody's not making fun of the church. This is EWTN. The one on the left is South Park. Tell me the difference. Excuse me. Okay, thanks, sir. This is a newer painting, but how are we going to get to this? It is now 25 years since John Paul wrote the letter. So how did we wind up with this? Not only, again, the cartoony thing, but from clergy, from a Jesuit. Well, that shouldn't be such a surprise.
Former Jesuit.
What's that?
Former Jesuit.
Yes, but he's been taken back in. He was, but we made this gap happen. We can't blame secular art for making this gap here. But just have to Google happy saints, and this is what you're going to come up with for Divine Mercy, Catholic organization. And then the issue of the not real icon. We have new saints and blesseds that we're not taking care of. Oh, see, I got that one of the attributes of saintliness is the iPad. Or we do something like this. Take Padre Pio and force it into a Byzantine style. These are not being venerated in Orthodox churches. We're taking classes to do this stuff. Here's another pathetic Carlo. See, I paint the icon. I'm very concerned about the flatness being reintroduced into Catholic art, because I wonder sometimes, has the going flat actually assisted in the disbelief in the real presence as we get anti-corporeal? I've been tutoring, by the way, I'm not anti-Orthodox at all. I've been tutoring this young man who's doing a whole iconostasis for his little church up in New York. I was teaching marbleizing and casting and plaster modeling and all those things. I don't know what happened here, but that's a continuation of the same thing. His iconostasis, sorry about that. So here we have the pictures of these saints that have yet to be really truly depicted, except for maybe Saint Therese. I've never seen a good one of Saint Francis Cabrini. And as the canonization approaches of Pier Giorgio, look at this. These comes from Catholic organizations. These aren't outsiders doing this. The one thing about the photograph and copying it too much is that the photograph is always of the past. It's always memento mori, okay? It doesn't exist anymore. It's of a certain time that you're locked into. So something like depicting St. John of Mola between Our Lady and St. Elizabeth, the Visitation, you got 3 pregnant women here, okay? I actually was asked to do a commission for St. John of Mola Church, and I did that was my presentation of a pregnant St. John of Mola, and with the fresco of the Visitation in the background, and the response was, we're pro-life, but we don't want to beat people over the head with it. Okay? Or, here's a solution. Blessed Carlo with St. Savino and St. Tarsicius. Talk about a saint of the Eucharist. But we're not seeing these sort of, here's the last commune of St. Augustine. Here's Padre Pio, last commune of St. Francis. Here's Benedict giving communion to St. John Paul II. We really have to speed up here. But we do have some people out there. This is my friend Raul Berzosa. So you can see how it goes from drawing to painting to use. And we're all going to have, it's more like this. I love this image. I don't know where it came from, but all these different artists painting Christ carrying the cross from different views, different compositions. This is the richness of Catholic art, okay? That we get to choose. We get to be part of the composition and say, well, what about if I see it from this way? It doesn't happen in the Orthodox. And I'm not criticizing. There's another young artist in Italy, Gasparo. And this is another major theme we haven't used in a long time. Jesus' wine press. And, of course, this is all the different signs and symbols of the Passion at once. This is by Fuchs. He's the grandson of Fuchs in Vienna, School of Visionary Art. This is one of my former students, Brett Edenton, who did a Solanus Casey for Cardinal Burke. And this is our local guy here, Neil Carlin. Now, that image of Miguel Pro is based on a photograph, but that's not the photograph. He's transposed it already and put different lighting on it. And of course, above there is his saying the Mass with the image of Our Lady Guadalupe on his chasuble. So it all ties together. This is also for the shrine and La Crosse. James Langley, beautiful triptych. This is an altarpiece. This is Anna, last name I can't remember. She and her husband both do church work. This is another image of Raoul. It's Cody Swanson, an American sculptor who lives in Florence. Most of his commissions are for here, though. Now, this is interesting because this is a Maya-style painting with Pier Giorgio in it, I think somewhere on that side, as a Dominican, because he was a third order. This John Michelin, very talented young man in Michigan, these people are out there. And my feeling is that it's not available. They're very available. They're working, thank God. It's not that there's no workers for the vineyard. Workers got locked out. They got locked out for a long time. I don't want people to have to wait as long as I did. You know. I mean, I was very fortunate, but it still was a wait. Oh, sorry, I showed that one again. So I did a course in Chicago with Kathleen Carr and the Catholic Art Institute, and 3 of the people are now doing commissions. We had no models, they understood that, but I tried to teach them how to draw from memory and compose. And then, of course, in my own studio, teaching light and shade, and I have very nice casts. And studying anatomy. This is a relief that Brooks Palmer did here from an anatomy chart. Caroline Easley, she did a transposition of a Van Eyck. This again is one of Brooks Palmer's, and it's showing up in New Haven now with the Eucharistic Revival exhibition. This is her deposition according to Raphael. Blind Leading the Blind by Jason McPhillips. I don't know what happened to that slide. This is Regina. She's over here. You can see her in person. She's doing a relief of Filipino Leafy. And Brother Joshua, who's probably at some party tonight from the what can I think of? The ordinations. He's in the seminary. Upside down. Don't know what happened. I was so good at this morning. Anyway, there's a possibility of getting the doors again, this time with the reliefs of the 20 Mysteries of the Rosary. So the Gaberi's on one side, my clay is on the other. Okay. Who knows? I just think it could all happen. And that's why I've always sort of been that way throughout my whole career. Just stay open to it. So this being the eve of Pentecost, I want to thank you all for being here and wish you every blessing of the Holy Spirit and the fruits of the Holy Spirit on you tonight. Be well.